You know you're going for something so big that you're going to have those days where you don't want it, where you want to quit, where you doubt. As long as you know that that's coming and you're familiar that that's on the way, you'll be prepared for it.
Welcome back to the Built for More podcast. Built for More is a podcast for those dedicated to doing hard things and building a meaningful life. We believe greatness isn't given. It's built, brick by brick, day by day. Here, we share the lessons and stories meant to help you on your journey to building your best life. This week's episode is long overdue, 2 years in the making. A lot can happen in 2 years. This has been highly anticipated by the listeners. Welcome back, Nick Sansone.
Good to be back, Jacob.
So much of what you guys do is rooted in your father's legacy and what he has built. And so I want to acknowledge that off the jump here. Your father started Sansone Group 60-some years ago, and you and your brothers have now grown that into a multi-billion-dollar business. And so I want to know, how do you start a small real estate firm in Missouri and in just 2 generations grow that into a multi-billion-dollar empire?
The first thing that comes to my mind is our people. You know, whenever we have looked to expand or to get in another sector of real estate, what we have done is we've picked a talented person and then built a team around that person. So, you know, you mentioned our dad starting our business. He always told us you're only as good as the people that are around you. And so I think our growth is genuinely due to the people that we have. I'm biased, but I think we've got the best people in the business because they're so passionate about what they're doing, and they're extremely competitive. They love to win, and they care about each other. And I think that that's a huge reason why we've had some success.
And I think in that success is deeply rooted in culture. And again,
Yeah.
they talk about the founder living on through the business. And again, that's a component of legacy. You mentioned in our first episode that you believe that your loved ones live on through you. What are some principles that you think are embedded in yourself that you've gotten through your father?
It's a great question. I mean, starting off light, huh?
Yeah.
So
We don't take it easy, Nick.
no, I see that. The other thing I thought about when you talked about growth is what your value system is. And I think a way to differentiate your team and your company and your business, even if you're one individual or if you've got 50, 100, 200 people under you, is knowing what your value systems are. And for us, our core values as a company ultimately are the values that our father stood for. It's faith, teamwork, creativity, hard work, and professionalism. Each one of those has its own story. Creativity, I can touch on each one quickly. Creativity, Dad didn't have any education. He barely got through high school. Didn't have any money. So in order to succeed, he had to think outside the box. He had to do what other people within the space were not doing. So he was big on creativity. And I think we touched on that last time. I think I even told a story on it. Teamwork. I touched on it earlier. You're only as good as the people that are around you. We're owned by myself and my 2 brothers. We're all equal owners. So if I want to do something and the other 2 guys don't, it doesn't happen. So it starts at the top in terms of this collaboration and teamwork. Our boardroom, it's a round table. There's no heads at it. That's by design.
Yeah.
And so creativity, teamwork, faith. Faith is just the foundation of everything we do. Start meetings with a prayer. Hard work, that goes for itself, but I think hard work's underestimated today because there's so many shortcuts and there's so many efficiencies that we can do, which are tremendous with AI. You cannot replace hard work. And frankly, I think it's a underrated art that a lot of people don't think about today. But our dad always said, I don't have any money in my pocket. I can't control the education that I didn't get, but I can control how hard I work, and I'm going to outwork my competition.
Mm-hmm.
And then professionalism is just how you carry yourself outside of work. Our business, last name Sansone. So we tell the folks that work with us, the way you carry yourself outside of work and in business is not only a representation of yourself and our company, but it's a representation of our family because our business is our last name. So it's a part of who we are. So professionalism is carrying yourself in a manner with integrity in work and outside of work. So the value systems, to answer your question, every one of them we have as a company is ultimately the values that our father stood for. And then each of us individually have our own value systems as well, our personal ethos, our personal mantras, and that sort of thing, which I have as well. But that's what it is for the business.
I love that. Let's stay on the business side because we're going to spend plenty of time into this personal sector of things. One of the parallels that I love to draw when I'm talking with you and your brothers or anyone from St. Louis is to First Form. I'm proud to be from St. Louis.
Oh, yeah.
Sansone Group, First Form, two great, I guess the normal brand, three great St. Louis companies. One thing that you both, First Form and Sansone Group, do extremely well is that teamwork, that culture piece of A players. And I think A players is a concept that is deeply hard to execute. Myself, just a little bit of context, again, being in the restaurant industry, it is really difficult developing people. Like, I've read all the books going into it. I thought I was going to be so smart when we opened our doors and hired our team. But when you are actually in the practice of doing the thing, the skill set is so much more difficult to develop. Talk about how you guys develop a team of A players.
The majority of our teammates that have stepped into new positions have been with the company, and they've been in a role, and we put them into a new role that they've never done before. Okay. But they've got the ability to learn. They've got a hard work ethic, and they care. And so we would rather take an internal person and have organic growth, organic elevation of their positions than go outside and recruit that. Because the person internally knows your culture, right? They know your value system, which is more important than anything else. And so the way we have developed our people, and it may sound harsh, is literally baptism by fire. We throw them right in because we have no other choice, and we've got to move and we've got to be competitive. And if we need someone to fill a role, they're going to step into it. And so as they step into that role, they learn by the mistakes that they make. And when they make those mistakes, sometimes we can be tough. And I think at times too tough when somebody makes a mistake, But if we're leading the right way, and a lot of times we get it right, when they make that mistake, we sit down, we go over it, we talk about it. And the other thing that I think is really valuable that we've incorporated is we have a lessons learned meeting after every single real estate closing that we do. We also have a lessons learned meeting after every single real estate deal that dies, that doesn't end up moving forward. And we don't want to make that a punishment session. It's a learning session. So we sit down and we talk about what went wrong, what went great, what we can do different. And then we just we literally get better with each and every deal. The only other thing I would say for folks out there that are leading a team is I have found it very effective to have a meeting with a team member one-on-one outside the office. You go meet them for coffee, meet them for a beer, a cigar, a workout, whatever, right? And it takes a lot of time. It takes your time up. But when you're giving your time to your key people and you're helping them develop, and it can be years, but if you're meeting them one-on-one outside the office, their guard's down, they're more comfortable, they're more vulnerable, they'll share more with you. You're more focused on them because you're outside the office. And that has been a great way as well to develop our leaders. And then we do the typical stuff. Leadership training, you mentioned First Form. We sent a team of our guys to a First Form event that they had. Sal was talking, Larry Rice, Ben Newman. We've had Ben help our guys. We've had Bedros come in with Ray Cash and Steve Eckert and do some leadership development. So we do the leadership development training, which is awesome. But the best, so it's one-on-one meetings outside the office, baptism by fire. When mistakes are made, you learn from them and you keep getting better.
Yeah. As a leader, when you have an organization of a couple hundred people like you guys do, it's easy in those early days to have your hands on everything, as I'm sure your father did, and as I'm sure you guys did when you guys were at a smaller scale. What are the high leverage uses of your time as a leader now? How do you continue to keep that culture in place when you can't directly touch every point anymore?
Yeah. It's a great question because it was something as a family business, and I'm sure other family businesses out there go through this. When you're a family business, I would say 95% of them, when they first get going, the family members are the ones making the decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
The founder, the brothers, the sisters, whoever. And for a long time, that's the way our business was structured. We always joke around, my brother Jim was head of HR, which is comical. Okay. He should be reported to HR. I get reported to HR. But Jim was head of HR. Doug, who's a principal in the firm, was head of IT. Okay, he knows as much about IT as I do Latin. I don't know anything about IT, but Doug was head of IT. So when computers would go wrong or, in IT, that's a tough position, right? That's hard.
Yeah.
Because like when something breaks down, you're calling IT and you're using a bad mood and like.
I'm pretty sure Doug told me he hates email and they got rid of his.
Does,
and that's
right.
the head of IT.
So if the technology was messed up, we would call Doug. Say, Doug, man, you're head of IT. Say, just please, guys, don't call me. But so we literally were like, apparently running every area of the company. And that was not good business. First of all, we're not great operators, my brothers and I. There's other people that do it far better than we do. But we were doing that for a while. And it took a real intentional effort in leadership to shift the culture away from us being the guys that make every decision. And so we started really bringing on other members in leadership roles to make those decisions. And that was a learning curve for us. We had to get coaching for that because we had to learn to let go, to let those other people make decisions and us not dive in and fix it. And it's still a battle for us sometimes, but we've gotten way better, the three of us. But we also know that that's something that's always going to be a work in progress. It's our last name on the building. When we see something going wrong, we want to dive in and fix it, right? But we've got to let our team members do it. So your question was, well, when you start to let go of the reins a little bit with the operations, how do you keep that culture when you can't touch every person? And there's a few things we do. Number one, we believe that culture is driven by ownership. No matter what, it's driven from the top. So it's our job to ensure that the culture that we want is around the entire company. And people either buy into that, and if they don't, then they're not there. And one of the things that we implemented was everyone knowing what our core values are. So on the first day of a new hire, they go into our dad's office, they sit down with one of us, and we literally go through the core values.
Oh, wow.
We go through the history of the company. We go through how dad got it started. And it's a little bit of a quiz in a friendly way, but we ask them, and I'll tell you, I've been in those meetings before where someone wasn't prepared and I've stopped the meeting. And I've called in our director of HR, Emily, who's awesome. And, I've just said, politely, Emily, so-and-so, isn't up to speed. I don't know if there was a miscommunication with what this meeting was about, but we need to do this again. Now, that hasn't happened in a while, but when I would have those meetings and the folks didn't know the core values or they didn't know how we got started or some of our history, meeting's over. And so the way to maintain the culture is that you ensure that every hire knows the history of your company, knows your value systems and are bought into it, and knows exactly where you came from. And the way you do that is just every single interview that a new hire has, we make sure whether it's the director of HR in that first meeting, whether it's a director within a division that new hire is trying to get a position with, maybe it's a manager within that position, every single touch point, maybe it's a principal at times, every single meeting, one of the first things our people are supposed to do, including my brothers and I, is to go over our core values.
Yeah.
So that by the time that new hire is hired, it's ingrained in their head. And if it's not, they get to have a meeting in the founder's office that we haven't changed with one of us and get quizzed on it.
Yeah. That's remarkable because I think about high leverage uses of time. Like I think as a lot of companies grow and inflate to become bloated and they're just full of bureaucracy and everyone wants to be in this ivory tower with full separation from the lower ranking individuals in that company. And when I think about the Elon Musk quote about one of his highest leverage uses of time is actually still being in the hiring meetings, that touch point from ownership down to bottom, because it's that first imprint, it's that first touch that says the people here really care. And these are the things that they care about. I think that's brilliant.
We've talked about that, and we've had a lot of long discussions in the past of whether one of us should meet every new hire. We've actually had that discussion. And what we decided is that we weren't going to do that because we wanted to make the best use of our time.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to entrust our people to ensure that they're hiring the right folks,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what we've done is there's certain positions where we have to meet them. But on the positions where we don't have to meet them, that's when we do that first day interview.
That's huge.
In the central office. Now, we don't do that with the out-of-town folks, but usually the out-of-town folks, my brothers and I have met because they're usually development guys anyway. So, yeah, it's an interesting topic. And the other thing that we did to preserve the culture, you mentioned First Form. I remember when I was in their office and also in Quick Trip at their headquarters, they have their like values all over the buildings, right? So we made sure to put those core values that I mentioned all over our office.
I love that.
Yeah, they're everywhere in big print. And then we also have quotes from our father, our grandfather, our grandmother, our great-grandmother, actually, all over the office of quotes that they said that we grew up hearing. And, everything from, do all you can and leave the rest up to the good Lord. Count your pennies and the dollars follow.
Mm-hmm.
All these little things, they're all over the office. And so that's another way to just maintain that culture.
Yeah. I've really become fascinated with this idea of showing up as a holistic individual, not putting on a facade, not being siloed. I talked about this with Greg, the founder of Bloom Energy, in our episode. He's built $1 billion company at 31 years old.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him about like when you're building, it gets stressful and you're always trying to shift like a chameleon based off the environment you're in and how that's playing a short-term game. It's not sustainable over the long run. And he was telling me that was a lesson that he had to learn the hard way, as all of us do. And I think that Sansone Group, and again, First Form too, but I think that you guys are a masterclass of intertwining your family values, your family history into the business itself. You told me in the first episode that family love is immortality.
Yeah.
And that is deeply intertwined in the culture of the business. And I think that that's just a beautiful thing to kind of talk a little bit about, is being the holistic person and showing the full side of it and not siloing yourself off in these domains and really trying to find ways to be who you are authentically through the business itself.
Well, I mentioned some of the leadership training that we did with some of our teams. And I have to give credit where it's due with Bedros and Ray Cash and Steve Eckert too. They were awesome. And they did some surveys with our people about, and oftentimes when you do those surveys, especially when they're anonymous, you hear things that are like, whoa, I didn't realize that. It's sort of you see your blind spots.
Yes, yeah.
You see your blind spots as a leader, But one of the questions was, what do you love about the company? And I mean, there was so much feedback on the family nature. Senior, they would say, which is our founder. He's not even, dad's moved on since 2020, right? But they all talked about loving that family aspect and the roots, the foundation being in family. And so, naturally, if you have a brain cell as leaders, you're like, all right, how can we really incorporate this, into our daily work life? And so that's what we've really tried to do. I mentioned Quick Trip. They're a great company. We've done a lot with them through the years, and we were at their headquarters. And I remember, I guess this was, I don't know, maybe a decade ago, I was with some of our guys, Mark Kornfeld and Grant Mecklin. And I walked in and I was so impressed because they had this history timeline throughout the entire lobby. And it was just these black and white, really cool photos of like how they first started. And it really caught my attention. And I'm like, man, we can do the same thing back home. I literally, from that lobby, I called my brothers. I think I left them a voice note. Like, oh God, here's Nick with another idea. But it was, hey, let's do this. Let's do a timeline.
Yeah.
And then we all got together. And so now when you go into our office, I think it starts with, I don't know if it starts with the birth of our dad, like when he was born, but
Mm.
I know it starts with when he and my mom got married.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like, you're looking at the timeline of a company, right? The
Right.
history of a company. Well, it starts with my mom and dad. Like, there might be a picture of my dad when he was born, but then it's like my mom and dad getting married.
Yep.
And that's sort of when we start the history of the company. So, and then it's all these cool milestones through the years. But intertwining that cultural aspect into the business has been a real intentional effort on our part, because the feedback from our people said they want that and they love that. And that's one of our differentiators.
Yeah, that's huge. I want to talk about developing leaders really quick. There's this principle that occurs in the world. It's the 80-20 rule, that 20% of your inputs account for 80% of your outputs. 20% of the quarterbacks throw 80% of the yards. And this has been found, it's originally a French economic study, but it's been found to be true across almost all domains of life, that distribution is about that ratio of 80-20. And when you talked about doing these one-on-ones with the leaders that you're developing, I mean, the reality of an organization with a couple hundred people is that probably roughly 20% are driving roughly 80% of the value. And that's not because the other remaining percentage is incompetent. It's just because they don't have the skill set, or they haven't developed enough to drive that value. But they have to start off in that lower quartile in order to become the value driver down the road. And so it kind of just stuck out to me when you were talking about having these one-on-ones with leaders that you're trying to develop, is what happens in those meetings. I think a lot of people, if they could realize this distribution, they would pour more into their key people. And I want to know what it is that you are talking about and trying to develop within them to get them into that producing standpoint.
Yeah. Well, first off, in terms of the value in the 80-20, I think all the parts make up the whole. And so I genuinely believe that every single role within an organization is extremely valuable. I genuinely believe that. And there are individuals that are in the front of the line when it comes to a deal getting closed and like revenue coming in the door, that may be the face and optically may get a lot of credit for that revenue coming in. But all of the parts behind the scenes truly make the engine run.
Absolutely.
And the folks that are on the front lines oftentimes are those that we need to sit down with and speak to and talk with, right? And then we want our directors and managers to do the same thing with the other individuals that are just as valuable, but they're offering a different skill set. So I told you earlier, we're not great operators, right? But we are, I'd say, pretty decent at being entrepreneurs and finding opportunities and finding new revenue streams to chase. So naturally, the folks that we're sitting down with to mentor and coach are those that are doing the same thing. Because I'm not going to sit down with somebody deep in operations and try and mentor them, because I don't know what the heck I'm doing.
Right.
Right. So, but what we talk about, and what I try to talk about in those one-on-ones when you get them outside the office, is understanding the why behind the ask. So you have to get that person to see things from your lens, which can be difficult. So in order for them to see things from your lens, you have to almost put them into your shoes. In order to put them into your shoes, you have to explain the why and the purpose behind what you're wanting them to do. And I think when you can get them one-on-one and you do that, something clicks where they're like, oh, now I get why you're wanting me to do it this way versus the other way. And the other thing that happens when you get them one-on-one is you build up trust. Because, if you don't do that, oftentimes, like it or not, people are gun shy when it comes to dealing with the owners. And they're gun shy sometimes when it comes to dealing with major transactions. But if they sit down with you and you explain to them the trust you have in them, the reason why sometimes you're tough and why you're driving this, the why behind it all, they start to see it. They start to think how you think. And that's the ultimate, is to get your people to think like a leader, to think like an owner, because then they can go do the same thing with the people behind them. So leadership, I think, is so much communication of the why behind the ask. And that takes a lot of time sometimes, because oftentimes we just want to say, do this, do this, do this. But if you take a moment and tell them the why behind it all, they then start to get it. You can't assume they know why you're wanting things done a certain way. Oftentimes you assume that they just get it. They don't.
Right.
You got to explain the why behind it.
That's brilliant. I love that. The why is huge. And I think that trust piece that you're talking about is equally as large. When you were talking about trust within that person, what immediately came into my mind is you're talking to them about the potential that you see in them. That's why you're pushing them so hard. That's why you're meeting one-on-one with them is you're basically telling them, hey, I believe in you. I see that you can do this. That's why I'm taking my high leverage use of time to sit down with you and pour into you. And I think that's brilliant because a lot of times when you're on the come up and you're trying to build something, whether that's as an entrepreneur within an organization or an entrepreneur outside of an organization, self-doubt is difficult. That internal talk. I mean, I know that plenty of podcasts I've shown up to in the past and, I'm down on myself. I'm going through all the reasons why I shouldn't be there or why I'm not good enough to be handling that. Dealing with a large transaction, I'm sure your employees feel that way too. I know after our last episode, you had sent me some kind words and that was jet fuel for a while because self-doubt's a very difficult thing. And so I'm sure people within your organization struggle with that as they're taking on these large opportunities and they're thinking, oh, I'm on this deal. I don't want to mess it up. I'm meeting directly with the owner and there's all of this critical negative talk. And you just sitting there and telling them that you have that trust in them, that moves mountains, man.
Yeah, it does. I agree. And you can't do it enough. You can't do it enough. And leadership development takes a lot of time. And, sometimes as leaders, we just want to move quick. We want everybody to just get it. We expect them to just understand it. But that's not proper leadership. They got to understand what you're thinking, why you're thinking it, why you're asking it. And they got to believe that you believe in them. And for all those things to occur, you got to invest in your people.
Yeah. As always, if you guys enjoy this episode, please make sure to share the link with a friend. I'm lining up some episodes right now that I'm incredibly excited about. I think they're going to be a lot of fun. I think they're going to be well received by you guys. But all of this is only possible because of your guys' support of the show. The more that you share the link, the easier it is for me to book these guests and the more value that I can bring to y'all. Well, and for leadership to occur at the top level, the leaders have to continue to invest in themselves. They have to continue to sharpen that axe. And so I'd like to kind of dive into yourself, your role in the business, what you do, and how you can continue to develop yourself. And where I'd like to start with that is you talked about having your own value system. What are your personal values?
Earlier this year of 2026, I guess it was in maybe February, a gentleman, Rich Christensen, and he is a brilliant guy. And he's all about value systems within organizations and businesses. And he's also about your personal value systems. So I went, he was based in Utah, and we did a 2-day, probably, figure 8, 9 a.m. till about 6 or 7 for 2 days. And then we might have had a half day in there. And it was intense. And man, he has a process to bring out what your values are. And so we went through that process and it was intense. I mean, you go back to when you're a kid and he's got all these different exercises and he's like a, psychologist on steroids. And I don't even know if he's a psychologist, but his process was incredible. And through that, we came up with my value systems. And, the first one, which I think is the most important, is surrender in Christ. And what that ultimately means to me is that everything's happening the way it needs to happen. Right now, you're in the right place at the right time. And things are unfolding in God's time, not your time. And ultimately, the only one that I strive to answer to is God. And that's it. And since our last time, there's been a big surrender into that realization. And when you're in a fast-driven industry and you've got pride, you got ego sometimes, and you're competitive, it's a really good reminder that all this stuff we're doing at the end of the day, ultimately at the end of the day, we're not in total control. There's someone far more powerful that's already written that story that we need and we need to rely on. So that is what the surrender in Christ is. Another one is ferocious ownership. And we specifically focused in on the word ferocious because it's all about taking ownership for your life, what you have and what you don't have, and going out there ferociously and going after the life you want. All, for me at least, to glorify God and to do God's will. And so if something goes wrong, instead of pointing the finger that way, point it this way. Tiny little example this morning. My man Bedros, we had a call set up. I was outside sitting in my hot tub after a workout. He texts me, Nick, we're supposed to be on a call right now. He helps me and I do coaching with him. And first thought was, why in the heck would my assistant schedule 30 minutes before a podcast, a coaching session with Bedros? But then I thought, well, wait a minute. I could have looked at my schedule last night. I could have looked at it last week. I could have noticed that there's a coaching call 30 minutes before this podcast and changed it. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think my assistant may have even told me, hey, just FYI, you got, but my initial reaction was I wanted to point the finger.
Yeah.
And so that ferocious ownership is just full accountability for anything that you don't have in your life or any mistake that's happened with your team or on a deal or anything else. Look at yourself first. And so I really, really like that one. And, another one is unapologetically authentic. And that is just showing up to the world on who you are. And it also has to do with not giving a damn about the opinions of others. Now that's hard because we're tribal in nature. We're communal in nature. We want to be liked. We want to be accepted. But at the end of the day, what the unapologetically authentic is all about is the only person that I'm answering to and that I care about is God. That's it. And I really work to not give a damn about opinions of other people. And when you don't care about opinions of other people, you're going to show up who you are. Now, that takes some courage too, right? But it's a big one. And I could keep going. I'll give you a couple more. Another one I really like, and I think there's 9 of them, is do the hard. And what that is about is life is hard, right? And so it's about leaving it all out on the field. Whatever you're doing, if you're bussing tables at a restaurant, be the best you can possibly be at it. If you're doing a workout that morning, do it hard. If you're going after a relationship or a marriage, whatever, do it hard. And so it's doing the hard. And what's interesting for me with that one, because under the core value, I have some sentences that kind of trigger what it's all about. And it's discipline forges character, character forges wisdom, do things that require discipline. But I also have on there, do things that help your spirit and help your emotional well-being and help your peace. So what's interesting for me is my hard isn't going out and doing a hard workout. My hard is actually pulling back. And like I got a x-ray on my hip because it was bothering me a little bit. And it's close. It's not there yet, but it's close to having some bone on bone. They're like, oh yeah, well, you're a candidate for, hip replacement. We'll get a ball and socket in there. I'm like, well, that's not happening. There's no way I'm going to do that. But what it does is it makes you have to get smart in your training and in your nutrition and in your supplementation. And for me, I'd love to do three a days workouts.
Oh yeah.
And so my hard is pulling back so that I'm good to myself. And so that I show some love to myself so that this morning, when I said, hey, I'm going to be late for this, that was that hot tub and that was that cold plunge and that was reading over my value system and that was reading a little bit of the scripture. I wouldn't have done that 2 years ago. So doing hard is subjective. It's not always go out there and be Billy Badass and crush yourself in the gym. It may be, hold on a minute. Instead of doing 15 rounds, I'm only going to do 10 because I'm going to be smart about this. So everybody's different. Now, there's other people that do need to push themselves and be hardcore and go do that because they're not doing enough of it. But so we went through all of these. I'll tell you one more.
Yeah.
I title it Worth of the Soul. And I don't like gossip. We all do it sometimes, but I don't like it. I don't like when people do it about our family. I don't like when people do that about me. And I don't like when people do it about other people.
Mm-hmm.
And me and Rich talked about this, and it became a core value of mine, worth of the soul, which means we don't talk bad about people that aren't in the room. So if you catch yourself gossiping about somebody, and I don't care if it's a stranger, you stop it. You don't do it. And it's defending people that aren't in the room is also what that's about. And then the other thing it's about is not thinking you're better than other people. You're not better than anybody else, and nobody's better than you, right? We're all made in the image and likeness of God, and every one of us can learn from each other. I can learn just as much from you as you can learn from me. So the worth of the soul is that every single soul you interact with is of value, and don't think you're any better than them. And I can thank my dad for that one because of his humility. And one of the aspects that people would always say about our father, and I may have said this on our last episode, is whenever they spoke to him, they felt like they were the only person there. He was just a humble, humble, humble guy. So that's become a big time core value of mine. And there's a few others. Family love is immortality. Love of family, keeping your tribe, protecting your tribe. There's tenacious will, which is having the will to hold on, not quitting, knowing that it's always darkest before it's bright again, that the sun's going to come out. And you just got to hold the line and not quit. And frankly, I think I almost went through all of them. The other one, childlike wonder. Living life like a child. That's the other thing, is that take a minute, enjoy it. Laugh, relax, enjoy yourself for a minute. And my brothers and I always talk about, my gosh, we work our butts off. We make a huge deal. We don't go celebrate it, And so we're trying to make an effort to do that, to celebrate with the team, take a minute to enjoy. And then the other one we call is the miracle of the mundane, which is just appreciating the everyday miracles that happen. Literally could be just your senses.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to see, being able to go outside and look at nature. I mentioned my hip or whatever. I had a run this morning. All I did was 4 miles, easy shakeout run. Just the thanks of being able to move. Still being able to go outside and run, do a workout, be able to breathe. There's miracles every single day that happen where if we open up our eyes and we're living, everyone says gratitude, but we're living in a place of humility and thanks and really looking for the little miracles that go on every day. It's all the time. So that's another value system of mine, the miracles of the mundane. So we went through all of that. I don't read that daily, but I constantly look at it. I looked at it this morning, and man, when you get your entire personal ethos into a 9 or 10 sentence deal that's on 1 or 2 pages, and it literally encompasses everything you stand for, it's pretty cool.
You've created a filter. I mean, how much time do people, myself included, waste because we're trying to decide how we feel or what we think about a situation? When you've got your values and you're living through them, it just creates a filter for everything.
It does. It does. And then it helps you make your decisions better too.
Yes, absolutely.
Choose a lot more wisely.
As you're going through that list, which I appreciate you sharing, a book came to mind, The Dichotomies of Leadership by Jocko Willink. You've got things like surrender, but then tenacious willpower.
I know.
And I would love to kind of dive into that because personally for myself, surrender is a chapter that I've been learning in the last couple, probably 6 to 8 months here. It's been a difficult one because I think as an ambitious person that wants to be a high performer, we have this tendency to grip and squeeze and tighten your grip to control things. And when you do that, it actually is to a detriment of the output. Sometimes you're too constrained. You inhibit the creativity that you just talked about. And so I'd love for you to talk about some of these dichotomies and maybe start off with just surrender versus tenacious willpower.
Yeah. It's a great question, and I battled with the same thing. And ultimately, the way I could sum it up is that I think in life, you got to leave it all out on the field. Like you go for it, right? But when you're going for it and you're leaving it all out on the field, you know in the back of your mind that ultimately what's most important is that God's will be done.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have goals, you can have outcomes you're going after, and you go after them tenaciously, right?
Yeah.
Ferociously. But you also know that the foundation of everything is to glorify God and do God's will. So as I'm going after something, I'm always praying to God, if this isn't your will, remove the desire.
Yeah.
But God, as long as I've got the desire, I'm going for it. And I'm going to assume it's your will until you tell me otherwise.
Right.
And so it just takes the edge off a little bit because you're going for it, you're going after it, but you know, hey, if for some reason that doesn't happen, or for some reason I don't get there, I guess that wasn't God's will and we'll redirect.
Right.
It just takes, I should say, it takes a little bit of the edge off. And I think it's the exact same thing when you're going for goals. There's a key thing that sticks out for me with that is don't make your goals your idol.
Mm.
Right?
Beautiful.
Don't make them your idol. Go for them, get after it. But the only idol that we should have is God. And I believe that if you surrender it like that, and I also say, hey, God, I'm going for this. If it's not your will, take the desire away from me. If it stays there, I'm going for it and it's his will.
I love that prayer. And as you talk about surrender, not making goals your idol, which again is so counterintuitive to a podcast that is so goal oriented. But no, I think it's awesome because I was fortunate enough to see Dr. Jordan Peterson speak at a seminar in Florida. And he's got one of the best quotes that I've ever heard on surrender. And he said, well, how do I know the thing that I want is what would actually be good for me? And when I heard that,
what humility.
It's brilliant. How do I know that my desire, that the goal that I'm striving for is what would actually be best for me in terms of my life and what I'm set out to accomplish? And I just think that that's just a wonderful, it's just a little bit of take your hands off the wheel, just a little bit.
That sums it up. What he said. And you just summed it up. It takes your hands off the wheel just a little bit. And that's where that prayer is. Hey, if this is what you want for me, cool. If it isn't, remove this desire.
Mm-hmm. I love this that we're having this conversation because here you are, a highly successful entrepreneur and businessman, and we're talking about things that I had on my priest from back in Kansas. And we're talking about some of the same topics across two different guests, but a similar thread. And it's this idea that, okay, you may need to take the hands off a little bit in terms of what it is that you're setting out to accomplish, but the baseline that is there regardless is not to be lazy, is to not to be satisfied with life to the point where you don't strive anymore to build something. Like this underlying belief of we are all built for more is rooted in spirituality. We are all called to do more in our lives and to build more in our lives. And I want to make sure it's clear to the listener, we're not saying to not have ambition and to not be hard pushed and to not try and build meaningful things.
The complete opposite. I mean, you said it perfectly. We are called to do great things. And I believe we are given certain gifts, whether it be you have good communication skills, whether it be you have tenacity, whatever it is, we are given certain gifts to go and glorify God. And if we're sitting on our butt doing nothing, we're not doing that. That's what drives me for physical fitness. This is our body. It's a temple, right? I know you're the same way. This is a gift. So I'm going to glorify God through that and try and make it as strong as it possibly can. I also want longevity.
Right.
I want to be around a long time. I want to be healthy. So yeah, and another thing I'll do sometimes with those questions that you brought up that are deep, like surrender, but go for it, is I'll go into chat or I'll go into Google or whatever, or I'll just go into my Bible myself and I'll search stuff on hard work.
Yeah.
Stuff on like leaving it out on the field. I'll literally write in leaving it all out on the field. Where does it say that in scripture? And since we're talking about faith in that, and it talks all about enduring, holding on, discipline producing character, character producing wisdom, going through some tough times, but it's not going to be tough the whole time. So for me, at least, going for it, doing hard stuff, setting goals, being the best leader you can be, getting after it in business, trying to be as most successful as you possibly can. To me, that's all in line with glorifying God and doing God's will.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dichotomy, and it's sometimes hard to articulate in words, surrender versus going for the goals, but I kind of think they go hand in hand.
So many people, and myself included, are just obsessed with finding these principles of success because success leaves clues. And yet most people, myself included for the longest time, don't realize that the Bible is perhaps the greatest story of success ever written. It's got the principles all in them. Whatever book that you want to pull out and say, your 5 rules of leadership and this and that, you'll find them somewhere in there. And the irony of that is not lost on me.
That's awesome. You see that. I didn't even see that till, I think, really honestly, over the last couple of years. But I think it's God's word, and I think it's the wisest book on the planet. And I used to not think that. I used to think that the Bible was written by men. It was distorted over time. And it's just a good book with some good stories. And Jesus was, a prophet, and, maybe he was the son of God. I'm not really sure on how all that works. And, it's just a good book. And my view on that entire thing has totally changed in the last 2 years. And people talk about because I used to talk about it, fear and control, and, it's all rooted in shame. That's what I used to say. So I shouldn't even say people. Yeah. I did. And I have an entirely different outlook now. I don't see shame. I don't see fear. I see reverence. And when they reference fear of God, they're talking about reverence and respect. It's so funny. We respect our parents. But when we talk about respecting a God that created all things, we have an issue with it. Why? It's pride, maybe? So anyways, my experience in 2 years is totally different than what I was before.
That's why I was so excited this episode is following you online, keeping in touch. I mean, we did a Bible study here. We've met occasionally there. We've kept in gradual touch at 6-month increments over the last 2 years, which I thoroughly appreciate. But to actually get to sit down and dive into this, I mean, we haven't even hit on the Ironman yet. We haven't hit on your routines that you're doing as a structure yet. But I just think it's remarkable, this change that we've seen from behind the scenes of how you're operating. And I think as we continue that conversation, you talked about earlier, glorifying the gifts that God has given you. What are the gifts that you believe you've been given? What is Nick Sansone's superpowers?
First, the difference 2 years ago versus now, and you mentioned some of the daily habits. I want to touch very quickly on, for the listeners, about goal setting and getting after it.
Yeah.
Because I want to hit that real quick.
Absolutely.
About the whole surrender piece. I literally have, I call it a legacy statement. I started it with Ben Newman, my buddy.
Yeah.
Known Ben through it since high school.
Yeah.
15 years ago. And that legacy statement has 5-year goals, 1-year goals, 1-month goals, and daily goals. Prize fighter day, prize fighter month, prize fighter year, 5-year plan. So I'm sitting here talking about surrender, and I can literally tell you goals that I had for April 2026, goals that I have for December 2027, my daily prize fighter day where it's the best day. So I'm all about that. I'm all about writing it all out. I'm all about seeing it. But the difference with 2 years ago versus now, I also have the mission statement, my purpose and all of that, is everything is ended with for the glory of God, to fulfill God's will. That's the difference. And so when you ask about, well, what are, your superpowers, or, what are the gifts that God has given you? What I think of is, okay, what has God given me to glorify his kingdom, to do God's will, right? Because nothing we have is ours. It's all been given to us. And so, I think about, I'm in rooms oftentimes in business with people that are leading industries, that are leading companies, where God and Jesus are not spoken of. You see it a lot in sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
See athletes talking about it, but do you really see a lot of businessmen talking about it? I don't see it as much. Now, you might with your podcast with some of the people, because you ask great questions and you go deep. But I think God has opened up opportunities in relationships for me to get in rooms that are pretty unique with very high-driven, powerful people. And as far as gifts that God's given me, the ability to connect, the ability to develop relationships, the ability to have people trust you, the ability for people to naturally want to open up to you because they feel safe. That's not because I'm special. That's just communication skills that ultimately God gives or God doesn't. And so I think that for myself has been a tool that I've tried to develop, but over the last couple years I've thought, okay, how can I use that tool not just to make money, not just to be successful in business, but how can I use that to really glorify God and his kingdom and to do God's will? Well, I can talk about God more. I can talk about my belief in Jesus more when the opportunity opens up. You have to have finesse when you talk about these subjects, because if you get on the phone to talk about a real estate deal and start talking about the love of Jesus, they're going to say, who's this wacko? So, but again, that finesse, that intuition, knowing when to go in, knowing when to bring something up, that discernment of when to talk about it, I think that that's a skill that is given to share your experience at the appropriate times, and you never know who that's going to impact, and you never know who that ultimately is going to bring God closer to.
Yeah.
So I think the ability to to connect and to develop relationships has been a great gift from God. And I also think the ability to problem solve has been a great gift, probably because I've gotten myself in so much trouble and so many problems over the years. You got to figure out how to get yourself out of them. But these tools are given ultimately so that you can do good things in life, so that you can have an impact, so that you can have an impact on your community. If you're doing real estate, you can have an impact on your people. If you're a leader, you can have an impact with foundations that might be doing good things for children or whatever it may be. The ultimate goal is, I think, to make an impact,
right?
Whatever that might look like. It might be just to help other people accomplish their goals and accomplish their dreams. But all of us are given those gifts, I think, to glorify him.
I love that. There's something that just came into my mind, a connection from former podcast guests. I've had two guests that I can think of that have talked about their value systems. It's yourself and then Devin Levesque. And Devin's got an interesting story because he was homeless at like 24 years old and on unemployment. And he is now like 32 years old. He just sold his stake in ProMix Supplement Company for a lot of money. He's done extremely, extremely well, become highly successful. And when I talk with people that know Devin...
Is that the dude that runs? He's a big runner and fitness guy?
He's a big fitness guy, yep.
Yeah. I've seen it, yeah.
So when
I love ProMix, by the way.
It's great, right?
I take that D-bloat.
It's good. It works. It's legit.
Yeah, I don't look so swollen.
But the thing about Devin, when you talk to him, is like he is not a tactical operator. He is not building your Excel spreadsheet, calculating your IRR. That is not who he is. When people talk about Devin, this guy just operates off vibes. Yeah. He hangs out with Jesse Itzler, who's partner of the Atlanta Hawks and one of those highly successful entrepreneurs online. He knows a lot of my former podcast guests that I've had on. I've had him on as well. But through his story, it's like, how do you go from homeless on unemployment at 24 years old to now highly, highly successful, hanging out with all these successful individuals? He just lives based off of vibes, and those vibes come from his value system. And when he talks about his values, it's valuing his time, who he's around. Just like you were talking about turning down meetings because a vibe doesn't feel right, or not wanting to do something because it's not in alignment with who you want to be. That is him all day. And it's so counterintuitive because a lot of times I think we have this misconception, and I fall victim to this too, that we have to play chameleon. If you want to be successful, you have to get into the room and be the person that the person sitting across from you wants you to be. You have to put on that show, put on that facade. And here are two examples and plenty of others out there of people that just say, I've got one life. I need to figure out who I am, how I want to live it, and then stay in that line. And it's not as simple as I just compressed it down to, but I think it's worth contemplating.
Yeah, you're spot on. Be unapologetically authentic. And Devin, who you're mentioning, he's just living in flow. He's just being who he is, right?
Yeah.
And he's feeding off the energy of other people. And if something feels right, he goes for it. And if it doesn't, he goes the other way. And again, that takes a little bit of surrender too. Like you said, sometimes in business, you can have an opportunity or person that you want to get close with or network with or partner with. And you might think that opportunity is the end all be all and you need it. You got to have it. And if you have a little piece of that surrender and also just being true to yourself, your intuition is going to tell you if you don't make that opportunity your idol or that person your idol, whether it's something you go for or not. And there's been a lot of times where I've been like, oh, this opportunity is fantastic. This deal's awesome. And then you get deep into it and it starts to shift. You sometimes want to hold on.
Mm-hmm.
You want to hold on, right? But I think you've got to, you can never, ever compromise your own value system and who you are. And if there's an opportunity and you're going for it and the person you're looking to partner with starts to do stuff that seems a little different, a little bit off your value system, things start to get a little bit weird. You're either going to be so holding on to that outcome and that opportunity and that person that you need to get close with that you're going to forego all of that, or you're going to stop and say, wait a minute, something's up here. And you're going to pivot and pull back.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to do. But if you can stay grounded to yourself and your value system, it's really tough to make a mistake if you do that.
I had a great mentor tell me that when it comes to negotiation, he who cares less wins. And that, I think, is also a
really
lesson in
good.
surrender, because when you let go of that control and you stop trying to hold on to that deal or that outcome, it's actually giving you leverage in the negotiation. He who cares less wins.
I love that.
Not he who is underprepared, not he who didn't do their homework, not he who X, Y, or Z, just not being tied to the outcome.
That's it, man. And again, it's counterintuitive because, everyone's like, you set a goal, you go for it, and you don't quit no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference between quitting and stopping.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between quitting and pivoting. You know what I mean? Quitting is, oh, it's too hard.
Yeah.
Or, gosh, I've been working every day and I haven't seen any results. Or, oh gosh, I've gone to the gym for, 6 months and nothing's changed. That's quitting.
Yeah.
Right? Stopping is when you're going for something and then that outcome that you thought was really what you wanted starts to shift.
Yeah.
You might realize that outcome isn't good for you anymore. It may not fit what you're going for. You may have learned along the way that it's different than what you thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a big difference between quitting and pivoting.
Yeah.
And I think in order to pivot or stop, having that surrender piece totally helps you do that.
Right.
Because if you don't, you're going to be stuck in pride.
Right.
And you're going to keep doing something just because you said you do it.
It reminds me of losing the battle to win the war. And what I mean by that is quitting versus stopping. It's talking about 1,000 iterations. Like when I think about my personal journey, I've been nowhere nearly as successful as I'd like to be. But the one thing that I would say about myself is I haven't quit. I've just pivoted a bunch of times. And when I think about my favorite podcast guests and some of the bigger ones that I've had on, like the Frisellas, talk about not quitting. They played that long game for 15, 20 years before they saw any massive level of success. And it's not because they put their head down and went in one direction. Talk to Andy, Sal, whoever it may be. There's 1,000 little iterations
no question
that were made around the way. And people that's just let go just a hair, make the slight pivot, but keep going.
Right. And for them, I'm sure that outcome they wanted, that desire for that outcome, never changed.
Right.
And quitting would be when you still desire the outcome and you still know it's great for you and, it's what you want, but you quit because it's gotten too hard.
Right.
Right?
Right. 1,000%.
But when your desire for that outcome shifts, not because it's too hard, but because of other reasons, that's when you pivot.
I want to get back into your operation here because we're talking about battle, war, winning the full thing. Ben Newman, Win the Day, notoriously. He was a podcast guest when I was still in high school. I interviewed him when I was like 16, which is awesome. I would love to hear about your work with him and how that has translated into what are your daily routines? What are you doing on the day-to-day basis? Your goal setting structure, all those things you hinted at just a little bit ago. I want to dive into with you.
Yeah, I mean, Ben's a beast. But I've had I've had a lot of coaches like Ben that have been incredible. I've worked with Ben. I've worked with Bedros. I've worked with Mark Devine, that was former Navy SEAL. Rich Christensen, John Chaplack.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And a lot of different guys. And, so like I said, I have this legacy statement thing that has just evolved over 15 years. And it has scripture quotes. It's got rules for life. It's got my own quotes, my mission statement, which is ultimately at the end of the day to live a life of freedom, which ultimately means not answering to the opinions of others, but only to God, and to fulfill God's will, to do God's will. That's ultimately my purpose. And then there's a lot of things under that, but it's got daily, like I said, monthly, yearly. And, so the daily is devotional, okay? Reading a devotional or some kind of prayer. My supplementation, hydration, workout, one intentional leadership touch, which I'll explain, one intentional act of kindness, and then it's actually two different, but one intentional step toward a goal that I have for myself. It's actually a total net worth type of goal. And then one intentional step toward what I want the EBITDA to be for our company. And that is ultimately just my prize fighter day. And it's simple. I can rattle it off. It doesn't always all happen perfectly in the morning. But what ends up happening is when I wake up, let's say the 80-20. This happens 80% of the time because it really makes me nuts when I see these people's morning routine. It's like, how in God's name are you doing that every single day?
Right.
But God bless you if you are.
They're up at 2 a.m.
Okay, but I just really want to be real with it. 80% of the time, if not more, when I'm getting up, one of the first things I do after I try to give thanks right there. And it's kind of while you're still asleep. Just start saying what you're thankful for, right? And it literally could be that you have a roof over your head. It could be that you can breathe, that you can still, anything, whatever. Then you get ready. I get ready. And it's supplementation. Supplementation's a big deal for me now because if we get into the Ironman, that's where it all happened from.
Oh, we're going to get into it.
Okay. Well, I take the hydrogen water. I take the D-bloat. I take a pre-workout. I take a trace mineral. I do a peptide. And then I take this nitrogen pre-workout drink. I take this oxygen water pre-workout drink. I literally get almost 70 ounces of water in before 7 a.m. And so I work out usually around anywhere between 5:30 and 6 a.m. now every morning. So get up about 4:30 now, 5. That's every bit of 80% of the time. And then my devotional that I read, it could happen in the middle of the day. It could happen in the evening, but I get it in 80, 85%, 90, whatever, 80% of the time we'll say. And then I like to do the hot cold therapy, which happens 80% of the time. And then those other things I said about the leadership touch, the one intentional act of kindness, the one step toward accomplishing the goal pretty much happens all the time. And the one thing I'll hit on with that is, because I think it's good for your audience. If you have a goal, and it can be anything, right? And it's one of those goals where you don't know how you're going to do it. I'm big on setting huge goals.
Mm-hmm.
Goals where you're like, how does that even happen? Right?
Yeah.
Do one action step toward that goal every single day. And I'm not talking about passive action steps where you look back in your day and you're like, oh, I did that. I'm talking about, in addition to what you're already doing, one intentional action step toward that goal every day. Now, if you do that 85% of the time, you will have done 300 or so action steps within a year toward that goal. Now, think of doing 300 steps the way those are going to feed off each other. It could be as silly as, I'm going to Google this industry to see if it's an industry I'd like. I'm going to ask this person a question about this business and whether they like it or not. I'm going to do some research for about 5 minutes on this topic. And so what it does is it takes the climbing a mountain aspect out of this monster goal, out of the equation. Because when you have a monster goal that's huge and you don't even know how you're going to accomplish it, how do you know where to start? How do you know how to put together a plan? You don't know your plan.
Right.
You've never done it before, right? So simplifying it. And my brain, I feel I have learning disabilities all over the place, so I like to simplify.
Yeah.
Just do one step every day toward that goal. So in my prize fighter day, I have a couple goals. One's that big value of what I want my whole portfolio to be. The other one is what I want, the company's EBITDA to be, and they're huge. They're like, how am I going to do that? One action step a day toward it.
Yeah.
And you can do that in anything. If you wanted to become a bow hunter, okay, do one action step towards becoming a bow hunter. Today it might be research a bow. It might be watching a video on a bow hunter.
Yeah.
So that one is one that I like to say to people because it's so simple. And I'll tell you too, it's not easy. It's not easy to do one intentional action step every day toward that. That's why I said if you do it 80% of the time, you're ahead of the game.
There's so much there that is incredibly worth diving into. When I have something that is audacious that I'm trying to set out and do, and I start doing that first little step, which I agree, it's got to be small. Completely agree with that. And I start feeling like, this is stupid. It's never going to work. How could I ever do this? I have this little mantra in my head, and it's dumb. It's 3 words, but it's small becomes big. And that is the theme that I've seen through the podcast every year with all these incredible stories down the list. Small becomes big.
That's so cool.
And my question for you is, on the days where you don't feel like showing up and the doubt is just pounding down on you, regardless of what you've done, what your resume says, and you're sitting there and you're like, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to ever accomplish this goal. It doesn't matter. How do you still show up on those days?
That's the best day. That's the growth day. So you show up because that's part of the process. My buddy, who was ranked number 2 in the world in Ironmans back in early 2000s, told me this. He said, if you are familiar with the road that you're going to go on, meaning you're going for something so big that you're going to have those days where you don't want it, where you want to quit, where you doubt. As long as you know that that's coming and you're familiar that that's on the way, you'll be prepared for it. So when those days happen, I know, oh yeah, this is just part of it. This is just part of the process. So now when I actually feel that, I get excited because that's the day where you grow. Because it's easy, right, to go to the gym when you're feeling good and to have a good workout.
Right.
It's easy to show up when you're feeling motivated, which motivation lasts about 5 minutes. It's easy to go after your business thing when everything's clicking, right? But it's the days when you have the self-doubt, and every one of us have it. Anyone that says they don't is not being real. Every one of us doubt. It's those days Now when I feel it, and this is just from trial and error, I'm excited. I'm like, oh, beautiful. Yeah, this is, oh my gosh. Yeah, listen, it's almost like I'm seeing and hearing my thoughts, but I don't attach to them. I'm like, oh, wow, look at that. Look at the way I'm doubting myself. Look at the way I'm saying I'm not going to do it. Gosh, that's funny. Okay, what an opportunity to go show up today. So I love those days.
Man, I don't even want to add too much on top of it. I think you nailed that, Nick.
Yeah.
Those days are so tough. When you have something out in front of you that you want so badly, but then we're our own biggest critic, our own biggest hindrance, our own roadblock. Like, I think people need to hear that.
They do. I have it all the time. And the other thing, when it's happening, I do this too, because try not to pay too much attention to your thoughts that day.
Just observe them.
It's kind of like, okay, I'm having an off day. You know, the weak mind's kicking in. I'm just going to let that roll. Because, isn't it funny too, how if you're kind of just observing it all, how some days you'll have that thought on a topic.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, it could be a week later or the next day, your like mindset is totally different toward the topic.
Oh yeah.
Right. So, okay, why am I even going to attach to this weak thinking? It just kind of, it's almost like you take a little vacay from what the brain's thinking and you just go anyway.
Right. We've talked about detaching from outcomes. I think it's also worth talking about this emotional piece that we're hitting on right now. Again, I talked about this with Greg Levesque and a few other guests that I've had on the podcast. When the highs are high and the lows are low, like that is a wide gap between the two of them. And when you are feeding into that self-doubt, that criticism, I stink, I can't do this, I'm never going to accomplish that. But then you have the high highs and you're like, oh yeah, you kidding me? All day long I can do this. That's easy. Like if you are riding the wave of the highest highs and the lowest lows, it's a tough spot to be in. I think it's worth talking about playing in the middle and almost desensitizing yourself just a hair so that you don't feel that volatility, that extreme volatility of those emotions.
One of my rules for life that I have in my legacy statement is to treat wins the same way as you treat losses, which is don't get too excited over anything.
Right.
And that's exactly what you're saying. And it may sound sort of pessimistic, but when things are going really well, I try to just calm down. And it's not like I'm looking around the corner for what's coming, but life works like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have these seasons where everything's going really great. And then you have these seasons of like, I call it like pruning, where your character is being forged and you're going through some tough stuff. And so I think what you hit on is really wise, is to just try and stay in the middle a bit, not to get too excited with your wins and when things are going awesome, and same things with your losses, and just kind of try to stay in that middle ground. It's easier said than done. But even if you just have the awareness of like life is going to do that,
right?
It's really helpful in the same way of just having the awareness that like part of the process is self-doubt.
Right.
There's not anybody that's accomplished or has a life that they love, that to get to that life, they haven't like questioned themselves 100 times over. So if you just know that, oh, this is actually part of my journey to reach my outcome, you almost kind of welcome that, because when that's happening and you do it anyway, that's like monster progress.
Right. Well, and I think that a big piece of you riding that middle wave is that foundation that you've set. Like I know personally for myself, I experienced such volatility with opening the restaurant. It was a very stressful period in my life. It was highs and lows like we were just talking about. As we talk about this 2-year progression, we're about to get into the Ironman section of it. You adding back in that foundation of those things you did this morning when you said, hey, I know that you're here setting up at 9, but we're going to record at 9:45 though, because I got to get through this list of things. That's not a list that you're checking off so that you can come on the podcast and say, I did this morning. You're fundamentally actually doing it for yourself. It is the foundation. And I think that it's important for people to consider what are just a couple foundational things that you can return to on a daily basis that can keep you anchored when you go through those rough, low times.
Have you experienced with opening your restaurant seasons of like calm and then chaos?
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And it almost seems like life is a law of averages. Like you were just talking about, you're always mindful during the success of what's around the corner. And I don't think that that's wrong to be like that. I know the thing that I personally struggle with is how to celebrate the glimmer of success because I think it's an indication that you're on the path of what you are trying to achieve. But being mindful, there's still going to be tough times around the corner. I struggle with the celebration piece because I'm always like, this isn't going to last. There's something coming my way that's about to be hard. That's been kind of a difficult thing for myself. I don't know if you have any tips on how to celebrate success, but still be mindful of what's to come.
We struggle with celebrating success, but we've got one life to live, and that's where the whole thing of like that childlike wonder. It's like we do all this effort and work, and you make an accomplishment. And treating your wins the same way you treat your losses is ultimately not having your wins being idle and holding on and gripping them so hard. So you just know, you have an awareness that this is a win and there's going to be challenges ahead. But that doesn't mean not to celebrate it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean not to enjoy. Put your guard down to enjoy, because if you're doing all of this work and you make these accomplishments and you don't pause for a minute to enjoy it, to recognize it, what's the point? You know what I mean? So I think it's just good for you as you have your mini victories and big victories. Celebrating that victory doesn't mean that you're saying there's not going to be any more challenges along the way. If anything, it's recognizing that. It's like, hey, we got to win. Let's enjoy this. We know we got more battles to fight. And after each battle that we win, we're going to celebrate, and then we're going to go back in and fight again.
I love that. As we start to wrap up, the question that we've been circling around that we didn't talk about, why an Ironman? You've got so many things on your plate, so many things that you're trying to accomplish. Why did you decide to do an Ironman? Because that's just a remarkably difficult accomplishment.
It was a half Ironman.
Well, it's still called an Ironman. It's
Yeah,
Ironman.
you're right.
Ironman 70.3.
Good point. You're right. I originally did it because my brother Doug, my brother-in-law Craig Mayer, and my boy Sal, and a few of the other guys, they were training. They decided not to tell me they were doing one, and so they all trained for one, and I was jealous I wasn't doing it with them. And we were all in Italy for Doug's daughter's wedding, and I was looking for a gym to lift weights. And there wasn't any in like Portofino, Italy. And if there was, I couldn't find one. And Doug was like in the Mediterranean swimming. And I'm like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Guys like swimming in the Mediterranean. I'm like going to try to find a bench press.
Right.
So I'm like, it would be neat on these trips to like be able to go bike or swim or run, and I'd never in my life have I been a runner. And so that was the initial. And then it was just to, like we talked about, do the hard, take on a challenge. And for me, I had never run, 2 miles.
Right.
So the idea of running, I don't know what it is, 13 something miles, swimming the mile and a half or biking 60, it just was like, this is a huge challenge.
Yeah.
Other people can do that stuff in their sleep. And so I decided to sign up for it. And I trained. At the time when I signed up, I thought some of the other guys were going to do it. They ended up not doing it because they had just done one in Louisville. But I signed up for it in Boulder, Colorado.
A little bit of an incline there.
Yes. And I didn't realize at the time when I signed up that that's one of the 2 pro qualifying courses.
Oh, geez.
The other one's in Hawaii. And so it's a tough course and altitude. And so I trained on it, solo. And I wanted to quit 100 times over. But that was one of the best experiences of my life. And going through that, I learned a lot. I grinded it out. It was more of, I told myself I'm going to do it, so I got to do it kind of thing. I was trying to prove some things to myself, but I learned a lot. And 1 week, I wasn't hydrating. I wasn't doing any supplementation. I didn't really have a good workout program. And I was like going to the pool at like 11 at night and getting my swims in. I had a great coach, but I didn't have a good weight training program, and I was just kind of winging it. And the 10 days before, I ended up getting shingles.
Oh.
because my body was under so much stress because work was crazy and I didn't do good time management. And so I ended up getting shingles, and then I ended up getting a staph infection. And so I was in the ER about a week before, and this was going to be in Boulder. And so going into that Ironman, I was on shingle medication and staph medication. And the humidity that day was ridiculous. And I think only 78% of people completed that one because of the heat and the altitude and stuff like that. And I got through it. And I ended up, my first thing I did after the half Ironman was I went to CVS to get my prescription filled to take my shingle stuff. But the other thing that I didn't realize I had is prior to the race, I had gotten my blood work done and my red blood cell count was really, really high. And I was just like, oh, whatever. And so I got it tested afterwards, and it turned out I had kidney stones. So I did that half with kidney stones, shingles, and staph.
Good Lord.
But I got through it, and I learned so much from that race. And it's ultimately where my faith really increased. Because I had an experience early on in the race. I had showed up on Wednesday. The race was on Saturday, and they had what they called a stroke and swim, where you swim, I don't know, one half of what you're going to swim in the actual Ironman, which was that Saturday, and then you go run a few miles. And I really thought that I was going to crush the swim. It's amazing how your ego is blind. Like, I actually thought I was prepared for this thing. Shingles, staph, never swam in open water before.
Oh, you never swam in open water before?
No. And I had only done 3 bike rides. I'd only done 3 outdoor bike rides, each one about 8 miles. But I had been doing the indoor biking, so I thought I was really prepared. And I was telling everybody about my mile time, what it was going to be and everything. I had an ego. Like, I thought I was going to crush it. It was like wild. And I get in the front of the line at the stroke and swim because I'm so fast with my swim. I can't, I got to get in front. So I jump into the open water. I've never swam open water in my life. And I'm just sprinting like I'm in a lap pool. 100 yards in, I can't breathe. There's waves, people swimming over me. So I start doing the breaststroke. Okay. Then I start doing backstroke. Humiliating. Then I ask for a buoy from the guy in the jet ski. And I'm sitting there 200 yards out in the water on a buoy. This is supposed to be a warm-up on Wednesday. The race is Saturday. Completely humiliated, thinking, what am I going to do? And what happened is my ego was completely shattered. I ended up getting through that swim, and my coach was like, what happened? I was really embarrassed. And I'll tell you what else. At that point, I was petrified of the water. I was actually scared of the water because I'm like, how am I going to do this on race day? I barely got through half. And so that is when it came over me. That is when my faith in Jesus and everything changed for me. Between Wednesday and Saturday, I had nothing left to do but pray. Because I was like, I can't fail this. I have to do this. Everybody knows I'm doing it. I can't quit. And I had no juice in me. I had no confidence. I had no power in me. Everything was gone. So I had to turn to something else, right? So I was desperate. So I opened up that damn Bible and I started reading it. And I'm just like, God, you got to help me, because I literally was desperate. And it came to me that water that I'm afraid of is the same water that Jesus walked on. Same water that came to me. And I started writing stuff down in my journal, stuff like that, stuff from scripture. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Started writing that down. All day, Thursday, Friday. All I can tell you is going into that race on Saturday, I couldn't have been more calm. My time didn't matter to me anymore. What I ran in didn't matter to me anymore. All that mattered to me was that I would finish. And the race was no longer a competition. The race now was about glorifying God. And I had a personal mantra in my mind on the swim that with each stroke was a stroke toward my faith. That each time I got nervous or start to panic, I just surrender because all I need is oxygen. And who creates oxygen? God, right? And then if I were nervous in the water, that Jesus was right with me and would get me through. So he walked on them.
Mm-hmm.
So almost become one with the water, flow with it. So that was my thinking and my personal mantra over and over and over and over and over the entire time. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I jumped in the water. Time wasn't, I didn't break any records, but it was respectful.
Mm-hmm.
That entire swim, I think it was a mile and a half or whatever it is, never had to stop, never panicked. A few times when I got nervous, just dove into my faith. I said, God will give me the oxygen when I need it. I thought about Jesus walking on the water. I felt the presence right with me the entire swim. And there were people panicking, because the altitude is very, very hard, difficult in a swim.
Yeah,
because you
sure.
go up, you can barely breathe because of the altitude. So a lot of people weren't expecting that.
Yeah.
People getting picked up on jet skis. One jet ski almost ran over my head. The wave hit me and I was coughing up but I never, ever lost control. And then on that bike, I had never ridden 55, 60 miles in my life. I had done 3 outdoor bike rides at 8 miles. I had kidney stone, staph, and shingles. I had no business doing a half.
Mm-hmm.
But I just would repeat, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And then when I got to the run, same thing. My body gave out on me about mile 7. I had nothing left. But I just kept going, and I would look at 5 yards ahead of me. I couldn't look at 10 because 10 was too far.
Right.
And I'd look at 5 yards ahead of me. I'd just say, just run to that spot. Then another 5 yards, run to that spot. Then another 5. And then I just said, Jesus, you got to carry me through. I can't get through. You're going to have to just carry me through. And then I just say, I can do all things through you who strengthen me. I can do all things through Christ who strengthen me. Literally, I must have said it, 500 times.
Yeah.
And I got through that entire thing. And after that, what I realized is the power in surrender.
Mm-hmm.
By surrendering, I was able to get through. I swear to God, if I did not have those prayers and that faith, I would have not completed that race. And it was after that when I realized, okay, your pride got you to that place where you weren't prepared, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your faith got you through. Now we're going to be smart.
Right.
So now supplementation, hydration. That's why I did my morning routine today. And it's amazing when that pride goes away, how much smarter you get with your training too.
Right.
So I want to do another one and I want to see how I do, but I'm going to do it smart.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to make sure my number one coach, I don't realize is my coach the day of, which is Jesus. I'm going to work with him the entire time.
That's cool. That's really cool. Is it going to be a 70.3 that you do?
Yeah. I've thought about that full.
Mm-hmm.
Takes a toll on your body.
Yeah, sure.
And it's something I've thought about, but I think right now I just want to do a half. Did a high rocks this year. I did a half marathon this year. And I think I want to do like an Olympic try. I want to do a half. I want to do another high rocks, but that full one, we'll see.
Yeah.
Have you done one?
No, I haven't done one. That's on my probably 2027 at this point. I went through an injury in the first half of this year. So probably 2027, I'll try and do a full Ironman.
You're an incredible runner.
I'm not an incredible runner. I can just kind of grit my teeth a bit, like you're saying.
But you've done the full marathons, right?
Yeah, I did 100 miles in November, which I can relate to what you're saying.
Insane.
It's a spiritual experience, for sure, because when you are hallucinating...
I'm talking about 13 miles, and you're saying 100 miles. That's just insane.
Well, here's the thing. I'm a terrible swimmer. So you talking about the open water? That scares the crap out of me, man. I fully resonate with how difficult that is, too. So,
but the 100's got to be a spiritual experience like no other.
Oh, it was, yeah. At mile 40, I was having some stomach issues and I couldn't, the food was not resonating well. I was bloated. I was struggling to move and I had 60 more miles and I'd failed that race for the last 3 years in a row. You were talking about finishing the Ironman almost as like a continuity of identity because you had told people you would do it. So you needed to do it.
I know.
It was the same thing for myself. And so I just started praying at mile 40. And the next thing I know, 25 hours later, I'd done 100 miles. So
really?
It's just gritting your teeth, man.
Do you walk sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You have to.
You do a lot of walking. Yeah.
Right?
That you're only running the whole thing if you're setting a world record. Like most people are walking.
How many hours does that take?
25, 26.
So do you sleep?
No. I just keep going.
What is the thing that they do that's 250 miles that they just did?
Cocodona 250. Yeah.
Have you thought of that?
I'm not to that caliber yet. I've got a lot of years ahead of me, so I'd love to get more competitive into the sports. Right now, I'm kind of going to dip my toe into everything and see what I really like, and then I want to get good at ultimately whatever that is. But I am not in a place to do 250 right now. That is a different beast.
Quickly, when you run, do you do it on asphalt or you try to get, do you do it on concrete or do you try to do asphalt or gravel or a track?
It just depends. Like if I can run a country road that's gravel, it's nice because the impact is easier on my knees. So it just kind of depends.
Think about that now while you're so young on impact and longevity in the sport. Like it adds up.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And the more gravel, the better it is for you. And even just asphalt over concrete or a track or, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm forcing myself now to just like have to be smart like that, run smart.
Right.
And, maybe it's every other week for a long run. And like the gravel at the Katy Trail is awesome.
What are you doing for recovery to get your body back to kind of baseline?
Yeah. So, I mean, the cold plunge.
Yeah.
Hot tub's huge, right? I do peptides.
Which ones?
BBC 157, which has negative stuff and positive stuff. I think it's great for recovery. I also do IGF-1, which helps with building muscle. So those are two that I do. I'm big on the hydration now after what I went through. So I think that this oxygenated water with these hydrogen tablets are great. They're these hydrogen tablets I use that I take them every single morning. I would say 99.9% of the time. I never miss. And it's just two. You put them in water. It's like Alka-Seltzer. It kind of bubbles up. You drink it while it's bubbling. And so that's honestly, hydration's huge.
How does that hydrate you more?
The science behind it, I don't know. It's oxygenating your cells.
But it's hydrogen is the
yes.
Okay.
Yes. And there's something with that. Like
I know Gary Brecka's big on it.
Gary Brecka. Yeah. Exactly. With
H2 tab?
Yeah, the exactly. Yeah. That's what it is. And the UFC, Dana White was big on it. And then I work with a lady that's like a biologist and brilliant. And she told me about him too.
Sweet.
And I'm telling you, I'm not kidding. I feel huge difference in my performance and my workout. So I take that every single morning for longevity, sustainability, recovery. I take a trace mineral. And then hot and cold therapy. I do exosomes. Exosomes are what stem cells release.
Oh.
And they're going to become more readily available to people, but ultimately they're like stem cells. But when a stem cell goes into your body, they release the exosomes, and the exosomes is what ultimately heals. They go to the areas that are inflamed and they heal.
Is this when you breathe in through the mask?
No, it's an injection.
Okay, it's an injection.
And so it's basically the best anti-inflammatory you can get.
Interesting.
And so I will do that. And then I want to make sure I answer that question because it's an important one. Oh, the weight training. So since I did that Ironman, I'm very intentional about what movements I'm doing in the gym that relate directly to whatever I'm doing in the moment, like running. It's about ankle stability, ankle strength, calf strength, different movements we do that mimic the run movement we're intentional about. And then also just building muscle density, bone density and strength. So the guy that I work out with is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
Kyle over at Coalition. And like, he is methodical with his programming and I'm methodical in following it. And so it's, 3 days a week with him, weight training. I do a 4th day for myself just for like sculpting with Matt Brown where you and I work out. Go in there and do shoulders and arms.
He'll kick your butt.
Yeah, he's tremendous. And then, I have these sprint intervals that I do because I want to get my heart rate at a higher level to be able to perform at a higher level. Because when I did the high rocks, I didn't like the fact I felt like I was really gassed when the heart rate was really high. I was good in zone 2, but not 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
So we do sprint intervals to increase speed and to get that higher heart rate. Then it's another day is a low zone 2.
Yeah.
And then another day is like a high rocks performance thing. So very intentional with the workout training, with the supplementation, with the hydration. And then as far as the therapies and that, I do red light therapy, hot, cold, and when you can, stem cells or exosomes.
Yeah.
And if you can do it, peptides. Other than that, I just all natural.
You are dialed in, man.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, my God, I'm, 48 years old. And the difference as you get older, you're either going to be a meathead, like I was a year ago with the Ironman and basically crawled to the finish line, or you're going to realize your age and realize how important recovery is.
Yeah.
And that's why I said sometimes, because I was talking to myself when I said it, there's a difference between quitting and stopping. And that's why I love Kyle, because Kyle will be like, that's enough today, Nick.
Yeah.
You're fine. So I have to remember, I don't like to do things based on my age. Like when someone says, my nephew, Mike, I don't know if you're listening, you're probably not. We did a half marathon and he crushed it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so did Craig. They all crushed me. But I did better this year than I did a year ago. And that's what I was happy about. And Mike said to me, I sent him a voice note and he wrote back, he's like, Uncle Nick, you did amazing. I mean, for a 48-year-old guy, I'm like,
that kills me.
I don't think like that.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Get your age out of it.
No way. But even though I'm not going to think like that, I have to be smart and realize that I need way more recovery than you or Mike or other guys.
Right.
So if you want to keep doing this stuff, you have to recover.
Dude, you're preaching. I know exactly what you're talking about. So valuable. Yeah,
well, you're a beast, though, man. You don't need to recover right now. But if you do it now, in the long game, you'll be crushing it.
Oh, no. Recovery is everything. I've been sidelined for a while, so I've been recovering hard. I fully buy into the value in that. Let's do some rapid fire to wrap up. I know you're a busy man here.
All right.
Okay. Entrepreneur or brand you want to give some flowers to?
The Normal brand.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. I got to throw it out to my nephews, Jimmy, Conrad, and Lan. Those guys, I was just talking about it yesterday with my buddy Bobby Gassoff, Navy SEAL, great dude. And he was I went over to his house to have some steaks, and he was wearing a Normal brand shirt. And we started talking about it. And he said, I go, they do it. No, I said, they do it right, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, they sure do. He goes, you go in there, they ask you if you want to have a drink. He said, you buy clothes, you come home, you get a handwritten letter sent, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying it because they're my nephews. They do things right.
Mm-hmm.
My brother Jim did such a great job raising them because they're like so humble. And you talk about like a family business and the culture of family. You go into one of their stores, they have black and whites of their family from their mom's side, from their dad's side. Their mom designs every store.
So cool.
I mean, they are, I could talk about them for a while. And then I got to give a shout out to my man, DJ, my brother Doug's son. He opened the first yard here in St. Louis, and that kid is crushing it.
Good.
And he's creating a really, really cool community. I've only been in there a couple times so far because I wanted to go in once a week on their turf day.
Mm-hmm.
And man, the couple times I went in, it beat the living heck out of me. And it's right there in De Pere, and he's crushing it. So that's the other. Would you say flower I want to water?
Yeah, give some flowers.
Okay. Yeah, I got some thorns that we want to make flowers.
Some thorns that make flowers, yeah. I talked to Doug after our episode about DJ because I'm in franchising and DJ's got into franchising. Remarkable. The yard gym is beautiful. And I think
cool, isn't it?
It's got a partnership with Nike, which is pretty sweet too. I
saw that. And they're originally from some Australian guys open it. And I knew it was going to be good because DJ's mindset, I mean, that kid's got the mindset of like a SEAL.
Yeah.
He's a beast.
I love that.
He's like you are. He's tough. And so if he was buying into the yard and like their programming, I'm like, okay, it's going to be tough. And but it's also good because people of all walks, like all ages and stuff, I noticed are in there when I go. And I'm happy for him.
Shout out DJ, man. What a space to create.
Yeah.
All right. I've got a couple more questions for you, rapid fire still. For someone who's trying to build something right now, podcast or book recommendation for them. something to check out.
How about yours? How about this podcast? Let's make it easy.
Yeah. Okay. Listen to this episode.
Also, Think and Grow Rich is a good one.
Yeah.
It's an old school book that's been around forever, but it's all about mindset, positivity, visualizing, and seeing your outcomes, writing it down, and actually making it happen.
Napoleon Hill is the man.
It truly is. It's like, I don't think that book will never, ever be dated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an incredible
It'll actually become more valuable as time goes on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, Nick, where can people find you online if they want to reach out, connect, learn more?
They can go to my Instagram, Nick G. Sansone, and I've also got that on YouTube, and I've also got it on Facebook. So it's, and then I got a website, nickgsansone.com.
You guys can find me on Instagram at Jacob O'Connor. The podcast is at BFM Pod. If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure to share it with a friend. Dude, you have a course that we didn't have time to talk about, so there will be a part 3.
Cool.
Congratulations on
Thanks,
that.
man.
Check out Nick's course.
Yeah, cool.
My last question for you. Looking back at this remarkable journey you've been on, what advice would you offer to your 24-year-old self?
I guess the advice that I would give to that 24-year-old would be to get close with God and think of everything you do as fulfilling God's will. Pray for discernment. Pray for peace, and pray that whatever motivations you have are ultimately to glorify Him. Because if I would have focused on my relationship with God, but also with Jesus at that time, I would have done a lot of things differently. And just like anything else, a foundation is built brick by brick, right? But it's built on the foundation, right? And so if your foundation, for me at least, is in Christ and God, you're going to be unshakable.
What's up, guys? If you made it this far, then I'm assuming you enjoyed the episode. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you follow me on Instagram at Jacob O'Connor. That way you never miss a new release. The show is growing. The momentum is real. If you enjoyed the episode, please share the link with a friend. Let's build something meaningful together. And remember, the future belongs to those who build it. Have a good one. We'll see you next week.